All right, folks, welcome into another great episode of I've Got a Theory. I'm your host, Henish. I've got my new friend and guest on, Jesse Vasquez, who's a trained biologist, works in R&D for cancer drugs, but he's got an interesting theory, and he's got a burgeoning career as a motivational and keynote speaker. So really excited to have you on, Jesse. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Henish. Appreciate you giving us the platform here and just to share my message today.
Yeah, no, you're really well spoken and thoughtful, and obviously, you're humble enough to understand that it takes information from everyone, and no man is an island. You need to absorb and collect as much information along the way. So I'm really interested on what you've got to share with us and what you can teach us a little bit. So what's your theory today?
So my theory is, life is not a marathon; it's an ultra marathon.
Aha, okay.
And so many people are like, well, what's an ultra marathon? Because, we all kind of know what a marathon is. It's,
26 miles or something.
Exactly. And so I thought, I ran a marathon before and I thought that was my limit. I said, oh my God, that was rough. Like, I can't go any further, right? Because that's how you feel after a run. Like, you're exhausted, you're tired, and you're like, oh my God, how did I do this, right? So most people are like that. But then recently, someone in my family ran an ultra marathon, and I was like, well, they 50K and 50 miles.
Wow.
And they're like, in their 50s, and not to say that, running doesn't discriminate by age, but still, it's like, well, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
What's holding me back? Why am I not challenging myself? And as an avid runner, I was like, I know I could do it. I just had that mental block, right? So anywho, so an ultra marathon is any distance that's beyond a normal marathon, which is 26.2.
Yeah, and
so theoretically,
kick up your presentation, because I looked up some stats just because I was interested in what ultra marathoners do, and sometimes they do up to 1,000 miles. Did you know that?
I mean, I have not heard that one specifically, but I mean, yeah. I mean,
so it was achieved in 1988 by a Greek dude, Yannis Kouris, and he did 1,000 miles in 10 days and 10 hours. So that's almost 100 miles a day that he ran for 10 and a half days.
Yeah, no, it's a whole new world that I, discovered in the last year. And so I found this image here. Life is an ultra marathon, scratching off the marathon part, because, there's so much capabilities that we can do as human beings, but, we set our, mental blockade and kind of, add these mental obstacles and, limiting beliefs. And so I think that's where this metaphor really hits strong, is life is an ultra marathon, and that ultra part can be, 30 miles, could be 50 miles, 100, 200, 1,000. So it's really up to you, and it's open-ended to what you're able to do and want to do with your life. And so that's why I think this metaphor really applies to, professionalism or just personal life. So I'll go to my next slide here. So life is an ultra marathon. So here we go, right? It's not a marathon. It's an ultra marathon. It goes beyond 26.2 miles. Here's just a brief picture of me, on the far right when I was like 2, 3 years old. And as life progresses, I went to school, obviously, as you mentioned earlier. And now, I'm just here with my fiance sitting on this little boat cruiser, just kind of navigating through life, etc. So I won't spend too much on that, but that's who I am, Jesse Vasquez here. And so before I go into this metaphor, let's talk about the first marathon, right? There's this conventional wisdom that the first marathon, was 25 to 26 miles. This was back in ancient Greece, 490 BC. The reason why they call it marathon was because this messenger from the city of Athens ran to the city of Marathon and to deliver a message and say, hey, we've won the war between the Persians, right? Or whatever conflict was going at the time. But after, doing some research and exploring this metaphor, but also other people, Greek historians were saying, well, actually, the first marathon was an ultra marathon, right? So there's more to this story that I didn't really know. And so here's a map here on the right where you show actually the distance where Peripides, which was a day runner per se. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a soldier. His job as a citizen was to run for days and deliver messages, right?
Wow.
And so, in
Let me
actuality,
ask you this real quick, just and maybe you
yeah,
know the answer, maybe you don't. Why didn't they use a horse?
you know, that's a good question
Okay, just we don't
because
have
they
to go
have,
into that. That's fine. I think we're gonna make these dudes
you
run
know,
when a horse could
right?
do it in a third of the
Maybe
time.
horses were, maybe they were scarce and they needed them for battle, or they wanted to be, stealth and sneaky and be able to hide, etc. But you
Sure.
have a
Okay.
point. Like, why
No,
didn't
no
you use a
worries. That's
horse?
fine. Yeah. I mean, I would think it'd be a special occasion job, not that like, oh, he's the postal carrier. He's going to run 150 miles.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's easier to, and honestly, and this makes sense later. You have to feed a horse, you have to carry water, etc. So a horse is not just gonna pull you along. But that's a good point to bring.
No,
Why
no
not bring
worries.
a
That's fine.
horse,
I don't
right?
want to put a little kink in your story here. So continue on.
So before the first marathon, Greek historians believe that there was a longer run. So Philippides, actually a day runner, ran 150 miles from the city of Athens to Sparta. So
That's incredible.
not sure if you see my cursor here, but if you go here in the black font, seat of Athens
Oh
down to
yeah.
Sparta over here, he delivered a message. And so an important thing was, he went down here, and so there was a deciding moment where it's like, hey, we could. They're not expecting us that we're going to come, and so Philippides, delivered a message and really kind of won the battle by delivering, what he had to say. But he ran 150 miles
It's incredible.
in less than 3 days.
Yeah. Wow.
So this was like, I was like, what? So the ultra marathon was actually the first marathon I ever ran, and he did it twice. So that was one-way trip.
Yep.
So then he went again, 150 miles. So he ran over 300 miles, within a short time frame. And the last distance called from Athens to marathon was actually from marathon to Athens was only 25 miles. And so that was when supposedly the runner collapsed and died because he ran so much. But in fact, the Greek historians say that was somebody else. Peripedes, he passed away because he ran over 300 miles. And, back then he was eating, dried fruit and drinking water. They don't have the same, supplements we have here today.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. Yeah. Let's continue on.
But I thought that was impressive. And so I was like, okay, I like this metaphor. It's kind of like it sets up the my next headway here is, so I personally ran an ultra marathon this year in January in San Diego. And never ran a 50 miler before. The most I've ran up to this point was 31 miles. And, not sure what to expect, right? But, the punchline is up at the top, but I won't dive into that yet. And so, I ran the 50 miler, and it was, the first marathon was actually fairly simple. The first 26 miles I did in 4.5 hours, but I've already done the marathon. Like, I knew I could do it physically, psychologically. Like, I knew that I was able to do that. And so prior to this 50 miler, I ran a 50K. So 31 miles, I've done it before. I was able to do that, right? Because I've done it before. So it was kind of like those last 20, like those last 10 milers that were the unknown, that I don't know how I'm going to react, my body, everything. But, the one of the moral stories is, I believed in myself that if I could do 30, I could do 50, right? It was kind of that self-belief and training and nutrition that really kind of helped me throughout to complete the race. So eventually I did finish the ultra marathon in just under 11 hours, which was not what I expected. Actually, I was expecting to take longer. But the
Ah.
reason I show this map here, go ahead, Henish.
No, I was just saying, aha, okay, yeah, interesting. I was wondering how long it would take you. I was
It
guesstimating
took
about 10 or
me
11 hours.
Yes, yes. I've been running for over a decade or so. So, if you count experience, also that helped me get through those mental hurdles. But the reason I say life is an ultra marathon, because this is kind of the terrain here. You see, this is the elevation map, right?
Yep, through San Diego.
And
So going uphill is obviously a lot slower than running level.
Yes, yeah. So this actually ultra marathon was not as steep as the previous ones, but those peaks are. It doesn't seem like much, 200 feet, but over a long period of time, it does add up. But ultra marathons typically are run in like mountain ranges and very steep, elevation. So this was pretty flat. But the reason I share this because you can see those peaks and valleys, right? And it's kind of a metaphor, I think, for life. Life is full of peaks, valleys, extreme highs and extreme lows. And I think that is a metaphor because when we start off our lives, we start pretty flat, right? Um, you're born. That's probably one of the biggest struggles you face with when you're born. We don't remember much of it, but it's there's up and down, but it's pretty flat. And so life, you're cruising along, you're going by, learning, going to school, spending time with your friends and family. And so similar like to a race, like you're getting going, you're getting started, you get into a rhythm. And then obviously throughout your life, you continue to go to school, you're still in that rhythm, you're still following the system. There's different, the crew members are there, for example, like an ultra marathon. And the crew members are very critical. They help you, they guide you, they check in on you, make sure you have fluids, food. So very similar to kind of K through 12. You go through your school system, you're learning a lot. And then, for some, it may, as you can see here, is now we're at the high school, college level where people are starting to be really challenged intellectually. And so for some, it's a kind of low valley or with some spikes here and there, wins losses. And so that's kind of similar in ultra marathon. You're going through these mental obstacles and sometimes physical, and you're pushing yourself, you're good in a good rhythm, but then you doubt yourself again and you're like, oh, I don't feel so good. And sometimes that's maybe because there's a downhill or an uphill in the race, so you're having this kind of mental and physical battle with yourself, which you can also kind of think about in your real life. And now the uphill, right? As you can see here at mile 25, it's that last year of your college, experience. And that uphill, it's getting tough and tough. You're in upper division courses. And so when I was running these uphills, it's really, you're really exhausted.
Yeah.
You really want to push through, but you have to keep the vision, right? I'm only going through this hurdle right now, but the prize is just going to be much better. So you kind of have to overcome that. And so here you can start to see now going into mile 30, it's a little flat now. And so things are better. Okay, I graduated college, my first job, I'm back on track now. You get your rhythm back. And so it's very similar to when I was running, and at 30 miles I was feeling good. I had changed, my uniform, my shoes, and refueled, etc. And so kind of a similar in my experience where, and I got my first job. It's like, oh my God, thank God! After all this hard work and struggle, I finally landed on my feet. Now, I made it, right? So you continue on this kind of steady climb here, and then the real world, right? It's the unknown, the what's going to happen after a couple years of working. And so I think this metaphor really applies as you go through that first marathon, right? Those first 30 miles, which is being born, education, and your first career job or whatever it is. Very people have different tracks. And then you have the real world, whatever that is, and it can have its peaks and valleys, extreme highs and extreme lows. You see at mile 45, there's a huge peak there.
Yep.
And to me, that was very, when I actually ran this race, those last 5 to 10 miles were the hardest. I was like, I want this to be over. I started questioning life, but looking back, it's like, wow, I ran 45 miles. What's 5 more?
Yeah.
And so, life is an ultra marathon because, you've done so much to this point, and you have to kind of recycle that pain, that effort, and to propel you moving forward to the unknown of, I don't know if I can make these last 5 to 10
Well,
miles.
I think the analogy kind of comes to mostly a mindset type thing, right? I mean, if your body can
Yes.
achieve it, personally, I'm not a runner. I don't love it. I've done a handful of 5Ks, just enough to realize that personally, it's not a thing for me. I love playing sports and stuff, but I'm just not into that sport. I love that people do it. I'm
Hmm.
super interested in buying it. I follow people that are ultra marathoners. Like Matt Graham is one of my favorite survival experts. He's
Hmm.
also an ultra marathoner, so I know about the sport and I understand it. But I think the key thing is like I kind of like the Jay-Z quote where he says, "Impossible takes a day." Or difficult takes a day, impossible takes a week, right? And I hear that
Yeah.
often when I'm trying to accomplish something. And I've got an appointment coming up soon where the gentleman's got an opportunity for me, and I've known him and I've done business with him for years. But one of his coworkers said, "Yeah, it's a really great opportunity. The difficulty is I don't know how much bandwidth you have with how much you've got on your plate, right?" That's kind of like getting to mile 26 and finding out that you've got 24 more miles to go. It's like, well, I'm halfway there. Do I keep going or do I just quit? So it comes down to almost how much can you push yourself to really keep achieving and achieving what you think might be impossible, right? Most people would
Yeah.
agree that to accomplish an ultra marathon is impossible, right? But you've proven that you can do
Hmm.
it. You've proven that you can do it. And it came down to one, obviously training, right? You can't just get out there one day and say, I'm going to run an ultra marathon. But two,
Yes.
also that your willingness and your mindset and that you were ready to do this and that you were ready to overcome it and you weren't going to fail, right? I'm assuming at this distance, there's probably, at lower distances, there's probably people that might quit. And I bet you at the higher distances, the percentage of people that quit probably decrease. If you looked at stats, the people
Hmm.
that couldn't finish a marathon is probably a higher, a lower percentage than the people that actually finish ultra marathons because they're just so determined that they're going to get it done, right?
Hmm.
Is that a fair guesstimate?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yes, it's a mindset. And going to my next slide is, this is just a metaphor here that I explained, but it is a mindset that you have to develop. So I'll try to wrap it up here. And I created these 4 lessons that or mindset principles that you can apply. Is adapt the growth mindset. You just mentioned it. I believe that I could do this. I believe that I was gonna, I trained for this. I'm going to do this. And that means, so removing all limiting beliefs, right? So I have a quote here: anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 28 or 29. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. So adapting this kind of growth mindset and belief that you're going to be able to do something you've never proven yourself to do, and people say you're not going to do. And so I think adapting that kind of mindset really opened me up to just positivity, and this is going to happen no matter what.
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree.
that was,
When I was looking up real quick before we had the conversation, you posted something on your Facebook saying, "Is it harder to reach or maintain success?" And I commented, and you probably haven't seen it yet, that I said that
no,
if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So if you just reach
yeah,
success, like I've reached this plateau and I'm good, but if you're not going up,
yeah,
you're going down, is what I would say.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you reach this mountaintop, you enjoy it, and then what's the next hill? That's someone who's adapting the growth mindset, learning more about themselves. And so you made a good point. And the second one is, obviously, this is the most important one. I think so. But there's more. Believe in yourself. Believe that you can do it, even if the numbers aren't showing or other people aren't say, "Oh, well, you're not running enough mileage per week." I only ran 25 miles per week. Most people say that statistically, you're not going to finish. You're not going to do well. But I believe in myself. It's like I know my training. I know my body. I know what I've done. I know what I'm capable of. So
Yep.
here's one of my guys, David Goggins. He says, "Believe in yourself. We all have the ability to come from nothing to something." And so I proved it to myself. And that the power of believing, every cell in your body is going to believe it.
True.
If
And
you have,
it goes along with a lot of those quotes that like, if you think it's impossible, if you can't do it, well, you're probably right. But if you think you can do it, you're also probably right.
yes, yeah, yeah, no. So you have to believe it, even if everything around you doesn't. And so that's like a metaphor for life. Like, I'll go to the next slide here. And be resilient. I think this is one of the mindsets, not only as an ultra marathon runner, but in life in general. You have to be resilient because there's a lot of naysayers out there. And this picture is a famous picture of the first female to run a marathon. And so you have the race director chasing after her, saying, "You can't be in my race because you're a woman." And then you have these other guys, kind of bystanders there. And then these other guys trying to help her and say, "No, she's a human being too. She's allowed to be run." So throughout life, you need to be resilient, just as in an ultra marathon is your body's telling you not to go, your mind is telling you not to go, but you have to keep moving forward. And eventually that little voice, that inner dialogue in your head just stops.
Yeah, I agree.
You
It's
just
one day at
over,
a time. Like if you can take each
yeah,
day and say, I'm going to accomplish things, or I'm going to make excuses of why I can't accomplish things, right?
yeah. Life doesn't get easier. We get stronger. So
Yeah.
um, I think, and one of the last ones that I hear is really, kind of broad, but find your gift. What's your ability? What's your technical advantage? In this world, in the professional, personal life, like what are you good at? What
Yep.
do you feel you're good at? Most importantly, don't cry about what you don't have. Use what you got. That was Jesse Jackson when he was running for president. And so I had to realize that for myself is, um, people were saying when I was a kid, I was like, I talk too much, or I was too friendly, or I would like to connect with my friends too much. And so I thought those things that were, things that were not good traits actually were. And so you
Yep.
have to find that niche, that ability that you can bring to the table, and that can help and propel you in professional setting or even in a race. Like, what are you good at? And so I think, these kind of mindsets, abilities as well, use your gifts, your abilities to improve the situation. So that kind of ends it here. Life is an ultra marathon, and you kind of define what that distance is. Is it 30 miles, 50 miles, 100? And you keep improving it. And so it's kind of more open ended, because that's how life is. There's no finish line. You keep going, you keep getting better, and you define your success. You define where your upper limit is, and you keep constantly reinventing yourself, and applying these 4 different kind of mindset situations can help you get there.
Totally agree, Jesse. That was excellent. I appreciate your time. I'm running out of time myself, so I'm going to wrap it up. But great advice, great tips, and super strong words to live by, and that'll get you to leave a lot more satisfactory life if you can look at challenges and overcome them instead of look at challenges and make excuses of why you can't do something. Right? You're proving that with
Hmm.
just a few steps and a little attitude adjustment, you can probably accomplish most things that you want to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's
Yep.
amazing. You look back and you're like, wow, I did that. And my whole time in my life, I had my doubts, but you keep moving forward. Keep
Awesome.
going. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you and hearing as your story evolves and how you get to your next ultra marathon in life. So let's stay connected. I appreciate you being a guest on my show. You've just seen another episode of I've Got a Theory. And thank you, Jesse, for being a guest today.